Buenos dias. Well, that was good. I was expecting a more, it's too early in the morning, Saturday at New York City. In any case, I really like to thank the Puerto Rican Studies Association and William Velez, the president, and all the leadership that helped us put this conference together. This symposium obviously was conceived almost less than 3 months ago, and then after the hurricane, we decided to change the whole focus, because how could we have a conference on Puerto Rico that doesn't address the catastrophe of Hurricane Maria? So here we have a hybrid, which we'll talk about it in a minute. In any case, Maria indeed changed everything. It's the biggest war storm to hit Puerto Rico since 1928. And today, Puerto Ricans in the island need our help more than ever before. We thought in prior conferences, you know that this is a cycle that we started as part of the solidarity movement with Puerto Rico. We have done several events, all under the rubric and brand of Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, to talk about 9 million people that have a tie in their history and their culture and everything that brings us together. But today, more than ever, we need our energy in the diaspora to support Puerto Rico. To date, 38 days after the storm, we are counting 49 facilities. That also doesn't include people that didn't receive cancer treatment or full dialysis or were contaminated and are not really counted. So we're really talking about
Last night, they upped that number to over 900.
900.
Overnight. There was a Friday.
Jesus.
Friday night news.
Where was I that I didn't read that news?
Friday night news. They did it on purpose. Overnight, they updated.
Did you hear this? Did you know this? And no one told me this?
I'm telling you now, bro.
I'm totally embarrassed about this. But in any case, oh my God.
They did it on purpose. Meléndez, it was on purpose. It was last night, so
I'm sorry.
over 900.
Over 900 fatalities.
Confirmed that.
Well, less than 25% of our people have running electricity or water. So less than 75% of the people have running water. About 1/4 of people have actually access to telephone lines, cell phones. Less than 80%, about 20% of the gas stations are not open, but as you know, in many parts of the island, the services are not there. It's very uneven. It's very regionally determined. The wealthier regions in metropolitan areas are better off, and the ones that are remote are not. We still have 87 shelters open for about 4,000 people. That doesn't count the tens of thousands of people that are bunking up with their families that have been displaced. The economy has been devastated. Over 100,000 homes were damaged. 80% of the crops were destroyed. 52% of the hotels are operational, but no one expects those hotels to operate more than 10-15% capacity. You know why? Because more than half of the tourism in Puerto Rico is from the diaspora. It's brown tourism, okay, visiting families and friends. No one is going to go for the traditional tourism to Puerto Rico when the rainforest is destroyed, when there are no amenities for people to look, where there is no guarantee that the hotels will have air conditioning and so forth. The occupancy rate next winter expect to be under 20%. And probably those are people that are related to the recovery efforts. The unemployment, we estimate is gonna double. God knows how far it's gonna go. A macroeconomic study projected a 21% potential income decline over the next 15 years. That's on top of the GDP declining 1-2% over the last decade, okay? That will amount to a cumulative $100 billion in lost economic output. The question is, how have we responded? Obviously, we know a lot of energy in the American public, in the Puerto Rican diaspora in the United States. A lot of people are trying to support. But I will say that the US government response, not to talk about the local response, has been at a minimum insufficient to the great need that Puerto Rico has. For example, the Comfort Hospital, it took the president 6 days to order it to go to Puerto Rico, another 14 days to get to Puerto Rico, and the last count, only 33 of the 200 beds available to Puerto Rico were available or occupied, of 1,000 potential capacity in the Comfort. It has to do with equipment and staff. The Army Corps of Engineers needs about 2,000 people. Last count, they have about 200 that were mostly working with generators. The Brigadier General Diana Holland, who's in charge of the Corps section of the Army, said that the contracting process to rebuild Puerto Rico actually went really quickly. That's a quote. The electric grid restoration, which is a major undertaking, has about 900 local workers. Unfortunately, this is not something that they can recruit off the streets. This needs to be very specialized personnel, and everybody that could do that is already working on that in Puerto Rico. However, in comparison, right, in Texas, about 5,300 workers were there right after Hurricane Harvey. In Florida, over 18,000 people were there after Hurricane Irma. The electric grid restoration is a long-term project. It's not going to happen in a few years, okay? The goal that electricity will be restored by Christmas is a nice ideal, and I hope that they can actually do that. Reports from the ground, people who are working on this, doubt very much that with the existing capacity, they will be able to do that. And to complicate things, Puerto Rican politics, patronage, corruption hasn't gone away. They just awarded a contract to Whitefish Energy that really smells like rotten fish. It's a 2-year company with 2 employees, and in a no-bid contract was awarded $300 million. The prior largest contract that company had was $1 million. They bypassed the American Public Power Association, which is what they did in Texas and Florida. Agreements that are in place prior to the storm, because they know what the storm is going to do. And this storm was predictable. And 2 days after, we all knew what the storm did. A congressional inquiry is likely. I'm not going to get into some statements that were made in Puerto Rico. So what all this amounts to? It amounts to a tremendous depopulation of the island. We all hear the stories of our friends, families, and neighbors who are bringing their loved ones to the States. And we cannot say, do not do that, because it's actually in the best interest of the Puerto Rican people that need services, whether medical or the elderly or children that need school, to be relocated for this emergency. We estimate at Centro, and there's a report somewhere out there, or it's posted on the web, that between 100,000 and 200,000 people are just going to leave 1 year, this year, okay? We also estimate that Florida is going to get the brunt of those migrants. And last accounts, I heard numbers from 50, 60,000 that are already relocated. We had a lower boundary of 40,000. We already surpassed that in our predictions based on census data. All in all, Puerto Rico lost about 15% of the population. That was about 500,000 over the last 11 years since the crisis started in 2006. Moving forward in 2 or 3 years, we estimate another 14% loss, over 500,000 people, almost close to 500,000. That's what we estimate. Could be more, could be less too, of the people. Think about that, right? 2006, about equal number of Puerto Ricans here and there. Nowadays, this is what's going to happen. This is a projection that we make. It's an informed projection. I hope that it's inaccurate. I hope that we don't see the depopulation of Puerto Rico. This complicates everything. How can you recover an economy that was already in shambles when you have this exodus of 1 million people in the span of a little more than a decade? How can we rebuild Puerto Rico if there are no significant number of people there to rebuild that economy? The workers, the families are leaving, and so on and so forth. This graphic tells a story. I sort of update this for every conference. Go back to when the crisis started, and there were about equal number of Puerto Ricans both in the island and in stateside. Fast forward a decade of crisis, and you had 5.5 million Puerto Ricans stateside and less than 3.4 Puerto Ricans in the island. That includes 150, 200 foreign-born individuals. Fast forward 2 or 3 years, and you're going to have about 3 million Puerto Ricans stateside, and 6 million Puerto Ricans stateside, and less than 3 million Puerto Ricans in the island. Think about that. We're now a diasporic people. We're now nomadic, moving from wherever job opportunities come. And this exodus is primarily going to go to Florida, but we predict, based on the last decade of preferences, revealed preferences, some economists will call it, of the Puerto Rican migrant, to where are the destinations that they chose. New York no longer is the largest destination for obvious reason, the cost of living and so forth. But this is a very, sort of important reconfiguration of the footprint of the Puerto Rican diaspora. Today, if that's true, that 60,000 Puerto Ricans went to Florida, there are more Puerto Ricans in Florida than there are in New York. Today, let alone a year, 2 years from now, when the brunt of this migration hits the state. Those migrants that come from Puerto Rico will need all kinds of support services. And we just spend the morning training about 50, 60 volunteers that are going to help us put information about all of this in our website. Okay? They're going to need counseling, a lot of counseling for children, for families, for the elderly, for people who depend on care from others to survive. We need to pay attention to the transfer of kids. The state of Florida declared an emergency, and therefore kids are allowed to go to school without all the paperwork in place. But that's not true in Chicago, it's not true in Pennsylvania, it's not true in New York. We need a policy agenda to address the needs of the Puerto Rican community. Health services, all the people that cannot receive dialysis, all the diabetics that need refrigeration for their insulin, all the people that need medical treatment for their heart conditions, for cancer treatment. All those people are probably relocated as we speak for a good reason. Where is the support network for those folks here? And I don't mean just about close families and friends. I'm calling about the community support system that we have created in the diaspora. How can we mobilize that energy to support employment, housing, the transfer of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and all the things that our people need? They're coming. They're coming, and I think it's time for action. Today, we start that process. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I think might be the priorities for us to discuss as we move through various sectors. Puerto Rico needs a federal emergency assistance now. Of all the efforts that we have done, fundraising for Puerto Rico, they might amount to a couple of $100 million with all the energy that we have put. Puerto Rico need anything up of $50-60 billion to reconstruct energy infrastructure, to reconstruct roads, to upgrade the education system. The University of Puerto Rico is estimated to suffer $1 billion in losses, okay? We cannot fundraise enough in the diaspora or the private sector to do what the United States need to do for the American citizens in Puerto Rico. But to make the federal government accountable, we need the diaspora. We are the ones who have representatives in Congress. Some of them are Puerto Ricans, many of them are not. We are the ones that can put a clear ask on their table of what is it that they need to do, like they did in Sandy, or they did in Katrina, or they're gonna do in Texas and Houston, or they're going to do in Florida. They need to do no less, perhaps not even no more, but certainly no less than all the disaster recovery in other parts of the United States. The bill that was approved, $35 billion, includes aid for other states that have suffered the effects of the storms or the fire. About $6 billion are earmarked for Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico needs, on top of that, for the recovery of the reconstruction of the housing stock and the roads and all that, a block grant that is typically what they give. The block grant and all these sort of middle term bills that are going to go through Congress cannot occur until FEMA finishes their head count of what the damages are. They need to file their reports. Guess what? They still haven't finished Texas or Florida. There is a bottleneck with the people capable of doing this. They're just hiring people in Puerto Rico. Guess what? In Sandy, this report was done in a couple of weeks, and that triggered the help to the area, right? In Katrina, took a little bit more because the devastation with the levees and all that was a bit more. But it was 2 or 3 months. It wasn't 5, 6, 7, 8 months as it is projected for Puerto Rico. In the meantime, the hardship, the misery, what do? So we need to ask Congress to act and to pass legislation in between before we know what's the final damage that this storm has done according to FEMA processes. We need a longer-term Jones Act waiver. This is a controversial issue. I understand that. But let's not resolve that issue right now. So all in all, we need to build a diaspora solidarity movement, and we need to do a lot of coalition building. We've been for years without a unified front moving forward. Okay, we're geographically dispersed every day more. We now have 2 poles in Florida and New York and the Northeast. Okay, how do we bring all that energy together to build a solidarity movement that can actually offend the legislative agenda that we need? Let's go back to the point, okay? There is not enough fundraising that we can do to solve this problem. Can only be resolved through action, legislative action, advocacy from our part. But to get there, how do we speak with a more unified voice? How do we bring together the variety of organizations? I count at least 10 or 20 of those. There's a National Puerto Rican Agenda that started, they have about 12 chapters. There's another new one that just is calling a mobilization to Washington. There was another one last week that called another mobilization to Washington. So the point is not that there is no NGO there. The question is, how do we weave that network to speak more unified with one voice to the extent possible? So how do we create that action effective network, okay? I was mentioning this morning to the volunteer session that we have this morning, that we have 400 organizations in our website that we've identified that have something to do with Puerto Rico or Puerto Ricans. About 200 of them are straight Puerto Rican-oriented mission. parades and festivals, about 100 of them. There's no doubt what they do. They do cultural activism, and they're fantastic. You know, Los Tres Reyes, San Sebastián, La Parada, okay? But they're more than that. They're the cultural organizations, El Taller Allá, you know, there are plenty of them. But those organizations very rarely come together, okay? We've been successful in bringing them to the diaspora summits that we have organized. And last year we have between 80 and 100 participants in panels, each one of them representing a different organization. What's about that for a dialogue, right? But we still need to harness that into an action network. It's not enough to identify them, to bring them together. We need a more unified voice. We need a more defined action agenda. So what can we do? We need to weave an engagement strategy. And by that I mean, in the panels that we're going to have today, you know, talk about specific things that we can do in the energy, in the education, in the health, and so forth. What is specific that we can do? We've worked very hard to have representatives from Puerto Rico. What President Cruz was talking about of individual to individual, college to college, organization to organization. Do the micro first, and then we'll move to the macro. Okay? Let's try to help in any which way we can, and we prefer to do. There's no debate about every effort is important. Question is, how do we move forward? So we need to build this solidarity movement. We've been working at it, but there's so much more work that needs to be done. And points of contact like the one we have today are important because we understand each other. Because we start putting aside the things that divide us, and we start focusing on the things that we can do that unite us, okay? And that's the message that I want to send to you. But today is an experiment. For the first time in the prior diaspora summits, okay, it's my boss. In the prior diaspora summits, we flew people here. Well, we don't have the resources anymore. We can do that in a month and a half to begin with, and there's no money to bring energy around. So we decided, okay, let's experiment. Let's bring people remotely via video conference. We've been experimenting with that, with the parades and festivals. Every time we try to organize sectors or do conferences, we have a round table in Puerto Rico. We use the video conference as a mechanism. Why? Because we have 6 people in Puerto Rico. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of people here that Brenda and Carlos, raise your hands. Who else is in the round table? Hey, let's give it a round of applause. These are the think tank. Brenda, where are you? Oh, allá atrás. She's shy. But these are the people that produce our policy brief. These are the people that talk about energy. So we have a couple of engineers from the Colegio Mayagüez. Efraín is going to be part of the thing. We have an environmentalist lawyer, worked for the Puente aquí, allá, Ruth. So we brought together, we have about 4 or 5 experts like Carlos on bankruptcy to really dissect, what are we going to do with this debt, right? We have a couple of economists, my colleague Juan Lara and myself. So we brought together policy people to just figure out some recommendations of moving forward with strategies. But this is an experiment in a very important way. This integration with Puerto Rico is difficult. So we went to Brenda and to other people, Jorge actually with Efrain, and said, can you engage people that you know in Puerto Rico that are concerned about energy and health and this? And I hope that each panel will have at least 1 or 2 representatives from Puerto Rico. Getting them access to the internet has taken all week to try to figure out, by the way. But they're traveling. Ruth traveled from Guayama to Rio Piedras to be able to be part of a conversation. This is the spirit down there, and they deserve our support. So I just want to cap this presentation with what is it that Centro is doing. Well, I mentioned the series of Puerto Ricans conferences. The brand here is we bring people together, we serve as a convener. We also document it. We also collect documents and put them on our website. We serve as a repository. These are academic things to do. But do not misunderstand the value of coming together, meeting other people, to weave that network of solidarity, to weave the movement. And when we can do that with people afar, from other states or people in Puerto Rico, the value of that is very, very important. Okay? So today is an experiment and we need your help to make it work. Are there gonna be glitches in the technology? Ay, Dios mío. You know, I just want you to be tolerant of what we do and think about it as a first step towards a more unified diaspora solidarity movement with Puerto Rico. Okay? Be tolerant, be supportive, and be respectful to each other. Carlos is going to talk about that in a second. But before I go, visit Rebuild Puerto Rico. Okay? Do I have Puerto Rico? Yeah. That's a website that has some tabs as to where you can volunteer, where you can donate, where to get help for people that are relocating to here. All the events on the calendars that we get from all the various parts of the country. So you can see the energy that's going on from all kind of solidarity events and so forth. We also have Puerto Rico News is part of, we put brief in there. It's organized by sections. This is the repository of what I mentioned, the round table, and what we produce that we try. Every week we put 1 or 2 briefs on various topics. So if the week is hot on a particular news, hot news, we try to have a brief that you can read and then summarize what the issues are and give you sort of an objective perspective on what to do. And some of those, as I mentioned, the Exodus brief is somewhere published, and we have copies of them, but you can find it in the internet. There are others, like the one we did for the Florida event in Tallahassee just last November. In any case, the big question that we need to answer today, this is the mandate to all of those of you who participate, everyone who's here. Answer the question, where do we go from here? And I have to say that the conference is structured around the themes of to learn, to participate, to listen, to respect others, to connect, to find common ground, to share your contact information with others, to make the connection, and to act, to answer the question, what can we do? Who is going to do it? So those panels that we have on Rebuild Puerto Rico are really about action-oriented. The academic panels are in the afternoon. Carlos is going to explain that in a second. And tomorrow is time to do something. It's time for action. I just want to end with the words of the great Antonia Pantoja, who has anyone who's an aspirante in this room, remember the triple A's, right? You know what they are? Don't remember? Well, she said you have to be aware. You have to pay attention like you're doing today. But you have to do analysis. You have to do informed decisions about where your actions go. What you do if you want to transform society, if you want to affect social change. And more important, I will end with what she said was the critical part, which is action. It is time for action. Muchas gracias.